Hey there, and welcome. Today, we're going to dig into a concept that is absolutely critical for any manager: direct labor variance. Seriously, it's one of the most powerful tools you have. It helps you go beyond just seeing what happened with your budget and lets you start understanding the much more important question: why?
So let's set the scene. You get the monthly report, and bam, your labor costs are through the roof. You're over budget. Now, your first reaction is probably some frustration, right? But your very next thought is, okay, where did this come from? Was it a bunch of overtime? Did we hire more expensive people? Or did the project just take way, way longer than we thought? This is a classic management headache, and today we're going to turn it into a detective story.
All right, so the first step in any investigation is figuring out the size of the problem. We have to measure that gap between what we planned to spend on labor and what we actually spent. And in the world of accounting, this gap has a name. It's called the variance.
Okay, let's put a formal name to this thing. The official term for this gap is the direct labor variance. Just think of this as our main case file. It's the total amount we're off by. The central mystery we need to solve. But here's the thing. This one number tells us that we have a problem, but it doesn't tell us why. So, to solve this mystery, we can't just stare at the total number. We have to break it down. And luckily for us, any labor variance is really just made of two key components. Think of them as two crucial clues that are going to lead us right to the answer. This lays out our whole investigation perfectly. Our total variance, that big, scary number we started with, it really just splits into two different causes. The first is all about price. How much did you pay your people per hour? We call this the rate variance. And the second is about quantity. How many hours did your team actually work? We call that the efficiency variance. Let's start by following our first clue, the price. We need to figure out if we paid more, or maybe less, for each hour of work than we originally planned to. This is what's known as the direct labor rate variance. And it's a super focused clue. It completely ignores how long the job took and just asks one simple question. Did we pay the hourly rate we thought we were going to pay or not? And here's how we figure out its financial impact. We just take the difference between the actual price per hour and the standard or planned price. Then we multiply that little number by the total hours people actually worked. That gives us the total dollar impact of that price difference alone. So why would this even happen? Well, an unfavorable variance, meaning we paid more, could be because you put your senior, more expensive workers on a task. Makes sense. Or maybe a new union contract kicked in and wages went up. On the other side, a favorable variance might mean you used less skilled, cheaper labor. But, and this is a big but, be careful here. As we're about to see, a favorable number isn't always a good thing. All right, we've investigated the price. Now it's time to follow our second line of inquiry, efficiency. Let's look at the other side of the coin and see how that time was actually spent. And this brings us to the direct labor efficiency variance. This clue tells us whether your team took more or less time to get the work done than you budgeted for. It's all about the quantity of hours, not the price per hour. Now, the formula might look a little complicated, but the idea behind it is really simple. We're just finding the difference between the hours people actually worked and the standard hours they should have worked. Then we multiply that time difference by the standard price per hour. This lets us isolate the financial hit from just the efficiency, telling us exactly what it cost us to use more or less time than we planned. And this is where the story gets really interesting. An unfavorable efficiency variance, meaning it took too long, might be because those less skilled workers you hired to get a favorable rate variance weren't as fast. See that trade-off? Or maybe you bought some cheap materials that were just a pain to work with. Now, a favorable variance here is almost always great news. It means your team is crushing it, maybe thanks to a new tool or a smarter process. Okay, so we've got our tools, we understand our two main clues. Now, let's put on our detective hats and apply all this to a real-world example, the Chowdown Incorporated case. Here's our first piece of evidence. Chowdown Inc. They planned or budgeted to pay their workers a standard price of $5.50 an hour. That was the plan. And here's what really happened. The actual price they paid was $6 an hour. So right away, we know we have an unfavorable rate variance. They paid 50 cents more per hour than they planned to. And here it is, the full case file. Let's walk through it together. First, look at the line for the direct labor rate variance. You can see the math there, and it comes out to $26,813 unfavorable. That's the total cost of paying that extra 50 cents an hour. Now look at the next line, the direct labor efficiency variance. Whoa, that one is also unfavorable, costing them another $22,688 because the team just took more time than planned. So you add those two unfavorable clues together, and you get the total labor variance we started with. Case closed.
So we cracked the case for Chowdown. But what does all of this really mean for you as a manager? Because the goal isn't just to do the math, right? It's to actually get some insight from it.
This quote right here is the absolute key to all of this. It's all about the trade-offs. You might save some money by hiring cheaper labor, which gives you a nice, favorable rate variance. But if those workers take longer or, worse, produce lower quality stuff, you could create a huge, unfavorable efficiency variance or even damage your company's reputation. It's all connected. So here's the bottom line. You have to treat these numbers as clues, not as judgments. They're just starting points for conversations with your team. You have to look for the story behind the numbers. And always remember, a favorable variance isn't automatically a win. And an unfavorable one, like paying your skilled workers a little more so they can do a fantastic job quickly, can sometimes be a really smart investment.
Which leaves us with one last question for you to think about. If using cheaper labor gives you that favorable rate variance, but it leads to slower work and lower quality products that disappoint your customers, is that number really a win for your business? That's the kind of strategic thinking that separates the good managers from the great ones. Thanks for joining me.